which we ourselves are not only powerless to supply, but whose nature is infinitely beyond anything human beings can even imagine." End of quote. Nichol was an historian, a spiritual writer, a social activist, one of the most inspiring figures of his time, a graduate of Balliol, who experienced tremendous travail in India and in Russia during the war, converted to Catholicism, spent many years as an historian teaching in the United States, returned to England at the time of the Maggie Thatcher administration, identified with the poor, went to Tantour, wrote a lengthy diary at the time of his dying, spent his whole life as a father, as a grandfather, as a mentor, and as a teacher, helping people to understand something about the longing for unconditional love. Nouwen's longing for unconditional love became the paramount motif or theme of an anguished, brilliant, and compelling life. This agony of being human, the restless searchings of the heart, these are the compelling motifs of Nouwen's own writing. But they are laced with autobiographical insight, shifting measures of his tortured peregrination, if you like, his effusive optimism, his boundless energy. If you listen to Nouwen, ever see him on YouTube or on any video, or have a memory of actually being there when he preached or lectured, what you remember is the Nouwen as performance art, that his homilies in a powerful way had to be experienced. He was a man of the stage as well as a man of the pulpit, and they spoke to that particular energy, that particular theatricality, if you like, that was so important in colouring his thinking and giving it expression. That optimism, that boundless energy, also coexisted with an enervating self-doubt. In many ways, then, Nouwen was the quintessential postmodern spiritual quester, someone on a journey that we can identify with in our time. But let's begin at the ending, if you like. It is not really what Henri Nouwen expected, his death, I mean, which he feared, by the way, for years. It took him by surprise. It was a generous gift by the divine lover. It wasn't supposed to happen the way that it did. It wasn't scheduled in Nouwen's daybook. Nouwen was a remarkable man in the sense that he structured his daily proceedings very carefully, precisely because so many pressures existed in his life to bring him into contact with individuals, with people who sought his counsel, with publishers, editors, correspondents, peers. All kinds of people wanted to in some way be in touch with Henri Nouwen. As a consequence, he tended to very carefully calibrate his time. It would often be frustrated when he wasn't able to accommodate somebody, particularly during a time of emergency, though he would always find a way of circumventing the almost Teutonic schedule and regime that he set for himself. Death wasn't factored into the schedule, although he thought of death often, sometimes obsessed about it, wrote about it, most particularly at the beginning with the death of his mother. But years later, with the death of Adam Arnett, we will come to that in the series, the role of death, befriending death, this ars moriendi, this strategy of being comfortable with death. But, and here's the telling point, when death does come, it takes him completely by surprise, which is merciful. On his way to the Hermitage in St. Petersburg in Russia, to shoot a documentary with the Dutch film company based on, many ways, the most successful book that he had written, The Return of the Prodigal Son, the story of a homecoming, Nouwen landed in Holland on the first leg of his transatlantic flight, and he went to his hotel in Hilversum to rest. He woke around noon feeling distinctly unwell, and he called the front desk. The manager sensed the emergency and called an ambulance, and thus began a kind of Keystone Cops scenario that was only too characteristic of the Nouwen style. Because of his very low blood pressure, the fire brigade was summoned, and he was defenestrated. Although thrown out of the window would be an exaggeration, he was actually lowered to the street through the window in a horizontal position.